Some of the stories we've been covering for you. The big one last week, that ICC story from the speech in Parliament addressing both houses of Parliament, and then going ahead to hand over the reins of power to his deputy to act while he was away at the International Criminal Court for the Status Conference. Joining me in studio this morning, Hassan Omar, who is Senator Mombasa County, as well as Advocate Ambrose Weda. Good morning, both.
Morning.
How have you been? How was Germany, is it?
Germany went very well. We did an elaborate process of benchmarking with respect to the Bundesrat, which is called the Federal Council, which is the equivalent of the Senate. In fact, I've been saying it on my social media, partly, that maybe it's high time Kenya follow the Bundesrat model. It works far better, in my view, in our context, than probably the Senate, because I think maybe I will explain it later. Then we've had a good week. Just the weekend ended with a bit of bereavement. My good friend Adedwale lost his nephew yesterday through a tragic road crash in Mombasa. You know, Aden was one of our residents in Mombasa for a long time before he became a politician. So he was coming back from Makina, and he got into a road accident in Mariakani. We want to wish the family the very best at this point and pray for them. So the body will be airlifted this morning for burial in Garissa. I equally lost an uncle, a friend, a mentor, a professor, Ali Mazrui. He died last evening after some illness, long illness. So I think tragic, but we also want to celebrate his life and wish them both to rest in peace.
Yeah. Weda, how have you been?
Thank you. It was a fairly great week. Seeing President handing over power and the new acting president. But Saturday I was in the Makueni County. I went to Makueni Boys High School. My son is one of the candidates. And it's good.
Did you listen to the pulse of what's really happening there?
I can tell you.
Makueni, the school
I can tell you that the MCAs,
yes,
they forgot two things. One, that the professor taught nearly all the judges. So they're in for a rough shot. Secondly, they seem now to be running away from elections. I think the governor has put on the table, if we really can't work, let's go back to the people. They don't want that. Yet, I think they're saying they're speaking. So if they go back on elections...
They've impeached him.
Yes, if they go back to elections, you'll see a big difference. But I think the election should be the best option for them.
So dissolution should be the way to go?
Yes, because they don't want to approve things. They don't want to move.
That would be too fast. It feels like then that sets a negative precedent. If that's, you know, after a few issues here and there, then you go dissolve.
Yeah, because you see, the Senate, on the other hand, where he serves, wants to guillotine governors. Do you understand?
Are they not fact-finding?
But even the governor, the senator there, is the one who called in the MCAs and incited them and violence broke out. Yes. And that was a very despicable conduct of a young man whom we have hope should be able to grow and lead this country.
So you're saying he's behind the governor's wars?
Part of it. He's joined the bandwagon because the governor has sealed the lead of theft and corruption. He has refused. These unnecessary trips to go and study how orange breathes in Israel, he has refused.
What do you say to that?
I think to a large extent, Wakili is right, that the MCA acted in haste, in my view. I've been able to follow part of the proceedings. And I think the mistakes are not few in the Makueni County. This is the county that has been hit by a crisis day one. Again, because I sit in the committee which will be making an evaluation, I don't want to be preemptive. You know, I might say something here, Wakili will tell you here, then somebody tomorrow
like, he already decided we're ahead of time.
Yeah, so we were sitting in a kangaroo process. But I think it's unfortunate, all these crises unfolding. I want to redeem, to an extent, my twin brother, because Mutula Kilonzo and I were born on the same date, 23rd October 1975. So I wanted to redeem him to that extent where I've asked him about the issues internally. He said he honestly believed he was taking charge of a situation where at that level, you know, one wants to believe that the governor and the senator almost at par So therefore, he thought as a senior politician or a senior office in the county, he could then be able to lead a kind of a process of reconciliation. And it's not for want of trying. The Council of Governors has tried. The political party or the coalition has tried. He tried to have that intervention, but the matters escalated to a point where I think whatever happened, the gunfight, the impeachment, professor putting on the table a re-election, I think it's all part of the whole development that we need to sift through the chaff so that we can be able to come with a very solid way forward, that even if it means to advise His Excellency, the President, to dissolve Makueni County for the sake of the Makueni people.
So Senate is also open to that, because
I'm
initially,
saying if it comes to that, to that extent,
okay.
If we will say, sometimes when you can't, when there's a break point, even unfortunate as divorce might be, sometimes there's a break point where the marriage just can't run.
Cannot continue.
Yeah, the love time graph. Love stops, marriage continues, and therefore that's a catastrophe in its own making.
All right, let's go to last week, and the big story then, of course, the stage was set when the ICC court ruled that the president must go, ICC, not the court, ruled that the president must be present. It's because the International Criminal Court is already court. There's court in ICC, so when I say ICC court, I'm repeating myself. Yes, ruled that the president must be present for his status conference. So that then got the debate and speculation started. People saying why he should go, why he should not go. Then his address to Parliament, and that speech beginning with him seemingly looking like he's not going to go, but towards the end, of course, saying he would go. Then the handover. And what some have called rather dramatic fashion in which events thereafter unfolded, from the trappings of power handed over to the deputy president, him living in a private car, the deputy president, acting president at the time, with all the escort and staff, and then the submissions in court. Looking at all of that, Senator, would you say, as some have, that the president was able to kill several birds with one stone?
One thing you have to give it up, and I keep telling my court friends all the other time, that one thing the Jubilee government or the Jubilee presidency has been able to do is the semantics of PR. At the very onset, when the president had coffee with the senior editors and journalists, we took that for a joke. But that was the starting point of a major PR drive. And he's had certain leverage in terms of locating his discourse in the media with almost unfitted, coverage. So I think that said and done, I think he played, the whole script was played very, very well. And I think it's, I said, I was telling some of our colleagues, just back off, give Uhuru his day. Let him have the headlines. We have the headlines time and again whenever we also take to our own processes. So therefore, every other person has to have his day. That's how the media works. That's how life is. Today it's the theater for Sophia. Tomorrow it's for Ambrose. Weda. Tomorrow it's mine. So I think we must not be too engrossed in what territorial advantages he's gotten. He's definitely had a
so
massive...
that is in addressing that court did not seem to have a counter.
Major PR, why would you counter that? Major PR.
Margaret said
but you see, the thing is,
there was failure for court. They were caught off guard.
Why would court have to counter that? What failure would court have in the circumstances?
Losing mileage, losing the hotspot? Absolutely
not. You see, for court, we have to also first be very honest to ourselves. There are certain things that are not our strengths, and there are certain things that are not the strengths of our colleagues. You see, what we have done is to allow ourselves to play in their home court, so giving them home court advantage. So you always have to ensure that you are the one who leads in terms of you playing the strategy that is you are most at home with. So if you engage the Jubilee coalition in terms of theatrics, they will beat you hands down. That's what they were meant for. But if you engage the Jubilee in a discourse, I can tell you, ideas. You come to the Senate, go anywhere else, and you engage in a discourse in terms of ideas, and you look at where the higher conglomeration of where you call intellectual force is. So I think what we need to do is to parade our own strength. So I think for me, it hardly unsettles me, because after the fanfare this week, I'll probably give it another week, Kenyans will have forgotten. The issues of the land in Mombasa and the Coast region will not have gone away. Issues of extrajudicial execution will not have gone away. But don't try to compete with a media euphoria, a frenzy at a certain moment. You will lose out. You will be a news brief within an arrangement of the spreads and spreads. Raila Raila's homecoming had spreads and spreads. Our Saba had spreads and spreads in all your national newspapers. You didn't broadcast it live. Everybody should be able to have their moment.
So they had their day.
They had their day.
All right, well done.
Sophia, let me explain to you. I feel very sad that those who are in charge of this country seem not to understand what a country is, what a state is, and what needs to be done. What the president did was putting the country first within the tenets contemplated by the Constitution. Why? The president being in court is equivalent to incapacitation. Inside that court, first of all, you do not know how long you've been there. He cannot pay calls, he cannot walk in, he cannot walk out. He is actually under arrest. Now, the reason why power is handed over, and Kenyans should know this, and people like go and tell the senators they should know this, is the country's ability to respond to external aggression must be ready 24 hours. That is the only thing that cannot wait for a moment. That is why in the United States of America, the president walks around with that briefcase carrying the nuclear code, because 1 minute's delay can bring down a whole nation. That is why you hand over that, because I will be under incapacity, you will be able to respond in case there is external aggression. And remember, Kenya is at war in Somalia. It is only that we don't think of it. Even if the president was going for a minor operation at Nairobi Hospital under anesthesia to remove a pimple on his neck, the putting the country first would require that at that moment under incapacitation, he hands over that power so that the country is able to respond. So it was not theatrics, but they don't see it. They don't understand. I think it's the president who sees, and others. Imagine when he was in that court. Then the terrorists and others, they attack the country. You have to give orders to respond. Who do it? We call him there and say, Mr. Uhuru, please, we are under attack. Where are you? There must be a commander-in-chief there. That is why there's never a vacuum. So people should understand that. It is not theatrics. It is the country and the security of this country. So when we think it was Jubilee's moment to do what, the president did one of the right things. It is not the first to be done. In South Africa, when Mandela was out of the country, and Thabo Mbeki was out of the country, they handed over power to Buthelezi for a whole week.
Perhaps it's the manner in which it was done, because the former Prime Minister, giving the same example, said that Uhuru tried to show himself as this magnanimous person and the government as such in just playing it all out in the media than doing it, but not necessarily.
Now you see, now let me explain the next point. Yeah. Let me answer to that.
Okay.
When you're now talking about state power, now the next body that you deal with is the people's representative. It's the people.
Right.
Okay? And you do not call the people in a rally, you deal with them through their representatives. Where in Parliament, you call them and tell them, this is exactly where I am. This is what I'm going to do. This is where I'm going, and this is where the country is. As I leave, I have left this order in place. What the president did should have been lauded, not people looking for minor, small mistakes to criticize. We are actually building institutions. We are making Kenya better. What Mandela did and what Kenya, we are moving. We should be able to learn as a country occasionally to congratulate and say, Mr. President, you did very well, and we think this will be something we emulate as a country as we grow in the next 50 years.
You see,
Not
what
looking for mistakes.
Wakili needs to understand, where he's telling us to understand everything, is also for him just to understand the Constitution. As simple as that. The Constitution itself leaves no vacuum at all. Well, it says in the absence of the president, the deputy shall act. Simple, Wakili. You tell us to understand that about these movie things about Obama carrying a briefcase with a nuclear code. That's for the movies, my brother. It's just a commander-in-chief. He gives the orders at any point where he's called upon to give orders. But that said and done, I think, you see, what I said, why it's fanfare. Because the Constitution envisaged all that. That there shall be a deputy president who you cannot sack, first and foremost. He's your running mate and you're tied to the hip together. So that there is almost a level of gravity in terms of the actions of the deputy president. And if you read the Constitution, you people were doing analysis left, right, and center. I saw John Allen and the rest of them doing all these analysis about when a president leaves, what happens, what the Constitution says. The lawyers were telling you time and again that it was not necessary for him to hand over those instruments. They were actually handed over through a very self-propelling clause of the Constitution. So that's the fanfare of it. You know, that's what people mean. That yes, you have pumped up the very, you know, self-propelling clauses of the Constitution. That the Constitution says Ruto shall act, the deputy president. What you simply did, you put it in a drama form and say, okay, now I'm even going farther ahead and giving him the instruments, which shall lapse at a certain level, a certain time. So therefore, I think that's said and done. I think that's where now the fanfare comes in, that even if it had not been done, the constitutional provisions will still have applied.
No.
So therefore, that's said and done.
Yes.
And then in fact, the fact that even the Constitution is very clear what can and cannot be done by an acting president. So therefore, I think in the totality, yes, he acted in a manner as to demonstrate that he was respecting the Constitution. But in the very Constitution, it has self-propelling clauses of how this type of situations will be handled.
Now, let me explain. Again, I feel very sad that these people, even lawyers, don't seem to understand this. They are always saying, Constitution is clear. Clear, you ask which part is clear. Let me get this point clear. The position of the Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces is not transferable unless you transfer it to another president. Ruto is, Honorable Mheshimiwa Ruto is not the Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces. I don't know which constitution they are reading. They are reading the Ugandan or the one. The one we have in Kenya, there is only one Commander-in-Chief. And it is that element that requires that you hand over.
So you're
the
saying
ability
in the executive order signed by the president, there was some powers that were conferred or transferred to Ruto that would not have automatically happened.
You want to say that Uhuru transferred the commander-in-chief position?
Let me explain. Listen, because this is not politics. This is serious matters of state.
That's why
the Constitution. The Constitution. Let me finish. Finish. Not just talk. The Constitution actually says, if the deputy is acting, okay, he will not be able to do ABCD. Do you understand? And that is acting when assigned by the president or generally. Now, this was a unique occasion when the president himself was going to be incapacitated, unable to exercise that core function of commander-in-chief. That is why it was necessary that that element to respond to external aggression, which cannot wait, to say this one now I'm acting. And that power is only to the president. So Mheshimiwa Ruto had to be officially brought in as an acting president.
So to be able to take Kenya to war is what you're referring to?
To be able to respond, even to call war if it is necessary. That is the only thing which cannot wait. The rest can wait. There's nothing which cannot wait for a president 24 hours.
So without that executive order, what is stipulated in the Constitution would not apply?
He would not be a commander-in-chief.
Listen.
Therefore, the military would not take orders. That order made him a commander-in-chief for that period.
Let me tell you.
And therefore, he would give orders to go to war, to respond, to do what.
So first and foremost, the last time I was on this show, I did exactly what Weda does, was a dismissive say a lot of other things. He got so angry.
I'm not
he
shocked.
got, the last time. So what did I do? I told you even as I left the studio. Weda does these things all the time. I'm so patient with him because we have developed, in our life we've developed that type of.
Let's go to the point.
What he's saying. Well, I'm just have to also repair him when with this opportunity comes. But anyway, that's said and done. The Constitution is very clear of the functions that can be transferred and functions that cannot be transferred. If the Constitution is clear and succinct, Uhuru cannot transfer any function that was not envisaged on the person of the Deputy President, including if the CNC is not a transferable function, he cannot transfer it.
Is it transferable?
As far as I understand it, the CNC is not a transferable function. And he makes it as if the President can just wake up one morning and say that we can go to war. That's not how war is declared.
That's not what I'm saying.
Because you're saying if it's
talking about responding.
Yeah, so even before you go to war, you need the validation of the Constitution through the National Assembly. So now you shut up too. You shut up too. You shut up.
Let's finish.
You just shut up also. So that's said and done. The Constitution has set out clear guidelines in terms of how a country responds to external adversity. It's not a question of a president waking up and saying, "Now I'm CNC." But yes, I do agree. There are certain threats to our sovereignty that needs to be dealt with there and then. And I think within the realm, even if the president is not within the country, within the realm of that kind of a situation, I think that the deputy president will be mandated.
So we need to get clarity on the CNC is transferable, but we need to take a short break on that note.
Just to tell you, that is why the president relinquished power. As he was leaving the place,
perhaps we'll get a copy of the Constitution so that we can get that clarity here.
Yes, during the break.
Yes, we'll get it during the break. Stay with us. The way it is continues after this short break. All right. Welcome back to Morning Express, 7:43 a.m. With my guests this morning, looking at events last week with the president attending the status conference at The Hague. Let's move away from what you all read from all of that and the symbolism of it to the events in court and some of the submissions that were made, and the prosecution maintaining that they want an indefinite adjournment. The president's defense team are saying that would be in violation of his rights for an expedient trial or process. So they want him to be acquitted, not guilty, and the case thrown out. The victims' counsel as well saying that if that were to happen, then what about the justice for the victims? What are your thoughts on what was said in court?
I totally agree with what Eric Mutua, the LSK chairman, said on that matter. I saw his analysis and I think I agree with it in totality. The options are two. One is very adverse to the, whichever way you look at it, they're adverse to, on one side, the victims, on one side, the rights of the accused person. And therefore, I think in mitigation, I would say if it were ever to be adverse on the part of the accused person, which is the president here, Eric was of the view that it has to be time-bound. You see, you need to say that within the next 1 year, we will have either proceeded with this matter or withdrawn it totally. So that is the kind of compromise that one will argue in the circumstances. You see, for me now, I think the matter is before the courts. It's, as everybody says, it's the discretion of the courts in which side to judge. But in my view, that I strongly believe, whatever decision it might be, it is unlikely that it is going to be unanimous. So I think there will be a dissenting opinion in whatever respect that the matter is decided. But I think in the totality, I think I was with Senator Ambrose in Berlin when some of these proceedings were unfolding. We had gone for our trip there. And now in a very objective discussion, I think an indefinite postponement will be a disservice to the cause of justice. You can't hang something on somebody's neck indefinitely. There's a point at which there must be a cutoff. Yeah. So therefore, it will be very interesting to see this jurisprudence evolve, because it will be an evolving or developing jurisprudence. That's my view. Whatever the courts will decide, it's something that has not been decided before. And whichever the decision that is there in the trial chamber, it is subject to appeal at the appeal chambers. So therefore, it is going to take another couple of months before it is actually resolved conclusively.
Yeah.
So if it goes adverse to President Kenyatta, he will appeal it, I'm sure. If it goes adverse to the prosecution's request, they will appeal against that decision. That's a likely strategy.
Whether those who look at it this way, that every time you mention termination of the case, throwing it out,
yes,
the next immediate thing that somebody would say, what about the justice for the victims? Can you fairly tie those things together?
Every crime has a victim. Do you understand? But if you go to Kibera or Makadara law courts here, then the prosecution comes and says, I don't have evidence for now, but hold this fellow. Look at a scenario where President Uhuru was not on bail, was not out. He was inside the remand. They say, okay, what you do, we don't have evidence for now. So keep him in until one day, if we get evidence, then we'll come and convict him. Even a kangaroo court would not do that. So any serious judge sitting at The Hague, and any serious judge who reads the basic law, you don't need international, basic law, would say, if you don't have evidence, unfortunately, we will release the accused person.
But isn't the unique circumstance here where that, on one hand, while they concede that he has, as a person, not interfered with the collection of evidence from Kenya,
yes,
he is the head of the government that is responsible, as they argue, to ensure that the government does, meet its international obligations, including that to the ICC. Isn't that the unique situation they're arguing out here?
Looking very novel argument, but what unique situation has not been met? Look at it this way. They are saying, give us telephone records. They think there that in Kenya, the telephone records are held by the government. You know very well that the telephone records are held by Safaricom and Celtel. And those are private entities. You don't just walk in there and get those documents. The way you get those documents is you go to court, you get a court order to get them. They have not done that. Despite the fact that the Attorney General has been telling them, this is the procedure, go there, go to the High Court of Kenya, get an order that this number and this number and this number. Again, the banking law in this country, these banks, we're talking about private banks, the banking law prevents people from going to get other people's confidential statements. The only way again to get it is you go to court and say, give us the 1, 2, 3, 4. They have not done that because it is good to accuse him. By the time the charges were being confirmed, the prosecution were ready. He was not a president. So all these are excuses that are meant to paint the accused person so that they say, keep him in. Any serious judge should be able to release him. The victims, the loss falls where it lies. Where does it lie? With the prosecutors, those who manufactured, those who went to a factory and manufactured witnesses. Those people should actually take responsibility and say, we took a shortcut. We were doing a manufacturing business. We have been discovered in our tracks. So you victims were suffering. But they're cheating the victims. Look at our accused person. What if the accused person was tried and acquitted? What happens? They still remain victims. So the problem, there was violence, there were people who are culpable, but the prosecution chose to manufacture evidence. They should take full responsibility and tell the victims, we did the wrong thing and you are suffering the pain. That is where the loss lies.
There's a lot of rethink in terms of the international justice mechanism globally. It's a robust discussion. Because when you go to a very more objective forum, they're not looking at it simplistically, that there's no evidence. They're looking at it that, as the prosecutor said, an unprecedented withdrawal of witnesses has been seen in what they call case 1 and 2 Kenya. And you see what happened, I almost can tell what Bensouda's legal strategy was. It's just that the date came far too soon. He made an application that all the witnesses who had withdrawn in Honorable Ruto's case be told to, the Kenya government be compelled to ensure their presence, the appearance of these witnesses. And the trial chambers granted it. Ruto and the Kenya government appealed that decision. As all this fanfare was going through, the appeals chambers actually confirmed the decision of the trial chambers, which effectively means that all those witnesses who had withdrawn in case 1 will now mean there will be an obligation on the part of the Kenya government to ensure their appearance or attendance to court. Secondly, in my own view, that was going to be Bensouda's strategy, because he had a withdrawal of about 2-3 witnesses in Uhuru's case, if I get it right, the way I read it in the media. So that means she will make a similar application to force the appearance of these witnesses. Once it is a decision of the court that those witnesses now can appear, then it will be a basis for cross-examination of the witnesses, because what we've heard is statements they published in the media that they were told to, they were coached by so-and-so, they were told to implicate Uhuru by so-and-so, and therefore you need to give timelines, time frames, where did this happen, when did it happen, because on cross-examination you will be able to poke some holes in terms of what the narrative people do put together, to put forth. So I think there is also indirectly what I read from Eric's analysis, indirectly there is an also obstruction of justice element that certainly the prosecution and the victim, the defense for the victims, the lawyer for the victims, has been trying to articulate, albeit in a very quoted form.
Yeah.
That's what they've been trying to demonstrate. That you see, there's been some obstructionist tendencies, and let's face it, that the ICC mechanism, in my own assessment, is not an alien mechanism to the Kenyan judicial structure, because we have accommodated it within our own domestication process. We have accommodated it within our own realm of the Constitution, and therefore, by my own view, an order by the ICC to produce certain documents, in my view, will be binding on the Kenya government, and it will be binding on service providers, because it is an extension of the Kenya judicial system.
Which is correct, but the argument in court, and I want us to move away from that, has been, whilst that is the case and Uhuru is the president, there are procedures and there's a Kenyan law that the prosecution is choosing to ignore and assume that, okay, he's president, he can just call so-and-so and get everything they want instead of following the procedures set out here.
I think we are the ones making that assumption. You see,
that's the argument that was made by the Attorney General
because the Attorney General also is making an argument in his defense. You see, there are two arguments here. That you need to come to the Kenyan judicial structure and try to obtain the statement. The other argument is that there is a law, there's an order by the ICC that these statements be produced, and therefore it is an order that is binding. So until we arbitrate... Which
is not in dispute. Yes, the question is, do you then ignore the laws in place on how to acquire these documents?
When I say it's an extension of the Kenya's legal regime,
yes, it
simply means that it's one of the structures. So if for me, when you domesticate a law, and for that matter the International Crimes Act, through the domestication, it gave force to similar ICC, for orders of the ICC to be obeyed in a certain way. So therefore,
to be obeyed in a certain way, clarify, what do you mean? Because that's where the bone of contention is whether he can just call and ask for the documents or to follow the due process.
Yes, let me give you another situation. When Barasa, the journalist, was to be arrested and handed over to the ICC. You remember that? Actually, nobody else, the person of the CS for internal security, through the Attorney General, had now written that Barasa be arrested and be handed over to the ICC authorities. If you do recall this, it's Barasa himself who rushed to court. It's Barasa who rushed to court to stop his extradition to the ICC. So therefore, why would you obey one directive and not obey another directive? So therefore, what happens, in my own view, the person
when he moved to court, did the process stop?
It stops, but
exactly. So the local processes were followed.
Yes, on the basis of his own fundamental rights, and I think that's so. In this situation, Uhuru Kenyatta could rush to court, in my view, and say that these are confidential, documents or the confidential records, and therefore he would have challenged whether Kenyan law had been followed to the letter and spirit in terms of executing that type of an order.
I don't know. I think you don't need a very serious lawyer to understand. One, there is no specific ICC order, assuming it was implementable in Kenya. Court orders in this country and the world over must direct the doing of something. They must tell KTN that the tapes for this date and this date, give it to us. There is no such order. There's no order against Celtel. There's no order against Safaricom. There's no order against Orange telling them, give us these records. There is no order against any bank. You get that? So that would have been. Secondly, Ocampo came here with a lot of fanfare, with the red carpet, saying my witnesses are in safe haven in countries outside. How they have now metamorphosed back, that they are now in Kenya and the Kenya government is supposed to get them and to hand them over, is a circus. Even if they were handed over and there's an order to compel them to go, they have done so in the Ruto case. And it has become more embarrassing because now these people give the horrid details of how they were manufactured. They were promised money, they were promised they would be taken to other countries, they were not taken. All these things. Those who manufactured these witnesses should come out and repent and ask for forgiveness, because it has put Kenya in a situation that we should not have found ourselves had we discharged our functions with integrity.
All right, let's move away from that. We will await the ruling
I wish
of the
it
court.
is easy for these witnesses to go back and say how they manufactured evidence. Who is their coach? Is it Hassan Omar? Is it Raila Odinga?
There are those who have accused you, by the way, in your tenure as the Kenya Human Rights Commission.
Just on platforms.
Yes.
Not in the courts, sir.
Not in the courts.
So they just accused. Said I've gotten used to it. You know, you bring Jeff Koinange brings some guy who is not even taken seriously by anybody. You expect me to respond to that kind of, what they call it?
They say
so that's it.
They say
a toad does not leap in the day unless it is a real day.
So what happens is I looked at the Ruto narrative in terms of his defense about manufacturing of witnesses. I saw the litany of people who were named in it, and I kept repeating this. For me, I'm here. I've not gone anywhere. I'm waiting. That's why it's nice to see how the Uhuru case plays out. Because I think there are very intricate issues of cross-examination.
Okay.
But that said and done, what we tend to forget is that these witnesses started to fall apart.
A bit of milk is good.
You see now this type of. I mean, you want to be called a senior lawyer, behave like one.
I am.
So that's said and done. You need to behave like a senior lawyer, Weda, so that me in here, and people out there can respect you as a senior lawyer. Seriously, I mean it. It's very important. So that's said and done. I think we tend to ignore the fact that some of these cases started this whole politicization of the ICC started well before. And therefore, it's something that I think will live with us, and we'll continue to have this evaluation.
So we wait for the judge's decision in 3 weeks, I think, Max.
Yes, absolutely.
What it will be. But back home, he returns to this grand welcome. Was it by design or by default that the 3 court principals...
Sophia, what kind of a discussion are this? For heaven's sake, what kind of discussions are these, Sophia? Let's go to serious issues. For heaven's sake, what kind of discussion is this, Sophia Wanuna? For heaven's sake.
Press. Now, at the beginning of this segment, that is the way it is. Senator did mention the loss of a renowned scholar and writer, Professor Ali Mazrui, who's dead. The family says Mazrui died at about 3:45 this morning in his home near New York. The 81-year-old scholar had been ailing for a while. Mazrui was an accomplished academician, professor, and political writer in African and Islamic studies, who served in his later years as the Chancellor of Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. He was born in Mombasa in 1933. He was an Albert Schweitzer professor in the humanities and the director of the Institute of Global Cultural Studies at the Binghamton University in Birmingham, New York. And gentlemen, you touched on this at the beginning of the show in terms of his contribution to society. Huge loss. Yeah,
very huge loss. I think a personal loss for me, because I said it. He's actually my maternal uncle.
Yeah.
And he was very instrumental in my formative years in terms of the choices I made, in terms of our academics. He inspired literally the entire generation of family and others who are not from family. I remember my last, very humorous kind of a guy. The last session I had with him is when he called me up and told me that he wanted to go and renew his diplomatic passport. Kenya offered him a diplomatic passport all his life, which is an extraordinarily great thing. So when I went there, there's a lot of restriction lately in the issuance of the diplomatic passport. But Ambassador Maina there was very succinct that there's a professor who's an ambassador for Kenya in many respects. All I remember is the best joke. We were told to hurry up somewhere so that we can get the passport issued. So when we got there, we ended up waiting for about an hour or so. It says this is a famous African notion. hurry up and wait. You know, you hurry up and then wait. It was a very humorous kind of guy. And, I will miss him dearly, and all of us will miss him dearly. I think he was a scholar who defined the parameters of African intellectualism, not without his share of criticisms from many people. His series, The Triple Heritage, his book was extraordinary. It was serialized in the BBC, giving the nexus of Africa between Africanism, Islam, democracy, and all these other issues and culture. So I think his contribution was great, and he will tell you one thing which is very inspirational. He did not start as a bright kid. He actually had to be pushed through school.
Wow.
But finally he ended up imbibing intellectualism. His father was the former chief Qadi of Kenya, Sheikh Alamin Mazrui. So therefore I think he has left a legacy that all of us will help to emulate. In fact, at a point before I joined politics, I actually decided on the academia largely based on his inspiration. And when I talked to him about it, he said, you see, one thing about you being a politician is that unlike us who are political scientists, we simply comment. You guys have to do it. And sometimes commenting and doing it are two different things. So he says your challenge is far more enormous. So I think we'll miss him dearly. I was told this morning by a family member that he had passed on. And we pray that Allah rests his soul in peace.
Okay. I'll capture that.
Yeah, I think Professor has left a legacy that we Kenyans should learn, that at the end when you are called to be with the Maker, what legacy have you left?
Yeah.
I met Professor when I was in high school. Those days, 1987, 88, they used to have, he did a book called Read Lectures, very highly intellectual lectures that we used to read in high school as to feel bright and to feel big. And they used to have a debate himself, Professor Bethwell Ogot, Professor Che, very intensive academic debate. And it was an inspiration to quite a number of us until I left history. But the legacy has left. Makes us feel very proud as Kenyans. Let you also outside there leave a legacy, not a legacy of robbery, stealing, looting the country, and spreading political hatred or terrorism. Leave a cool legacy like Professor, and you shall have done him the good service. I also expect you to follow suit and leave a legacy, good one, that will remember you with. And God has given him 81 years, 11 years of, injury time.
70.
What?
Yeah, 70 is the year. Then 11 years. That means
it's extra.
Yes,
it's a blessing.
So it's a challenge to us to leave a legacy.
The last time I was leading him to this hotel, there's Royal Court and the other one Royal. He was going to give a public lecture about a year ago or so, and a year and a half, organized by Muhuri at that time, and he could barely walk anymore. And he told me, have the patience, He says, I remember my years when you were just like you. Like every system in life, it slows down. Your brain becomes slower, your body works becomes slower. And just to echo what Wakili has said, he said, give it your best shot in life, He says, when you still can. He told me these are the best times of your life, you're most energetic, be honest to yourself, be honest to the causes you believe in. But one thing he always believed, and that's why people misunderstand some of us. Even when you stand alone on an idea, as long as it's based on conviction. There was a time he could not even set foot in Kenya based on the fact that he was said to be radical, had radical ideas. He talked of he talked about his moments when Gaddafi invited him, the state honors that he got at that time, and many other experiences in life. He characterized some of the most humble leaders. He had a soft spot for Mwai Kibaki, who appointed him JKUAT Chancellor. He felt that the economist has done pretty well in one or two regards. And I think he also felt that one of the things I must say, he told me this. He told me that he had never been celebrated at home in any particular way, apart from people reading his books and saying there's a Professor Ali Mazrui. He felt extremely honored and humbled by Kibaki's appointment as Chancellor of JKUAT. He said that it's the first real recognition he got in his own motherland, which I think he never at any time gave away his U.S. citizenship. his Kenyan citizenship. Despite the length of time he lived in the U.S., he was always a Kenyan citizen. He therefore was very proud about his Kenyan citizenship. But he was very humbled and elated that Kibaki will ultimately recognize him. And for that reason, he developed quite a soft spot. And at that point also, I remember he asked us to support some of his policies were very progressive, including infrastructure and issues of that nature. So I had great moments, and I think that it was in order for my colleagues to tell me this morning that because I've always felt that I was inspired greatly by his intellectual prowess, his articulation, his mastery in many political thoughts. And as I said, is one of the very few in cost that we can celebrate. There are a lot of other professors, Professor Haider, Professor Bujra, many professors that I think, Muhyiddin and the rest of them, I think they're all an inspiration to all of us. And
okay.
Yes.
Let me read some of the tweets that are coming through. There's a hashtag now that is trending, Ali Mazrui. People just finding out, learning of the news and paying their tributes. Alamin Kimathi says, sad news this about the passing on last night of Professor Mazrui, one of Africa's greatest scholars of our time. We also woke up to the sad news of passing of the great African Professor Mazrui. May he rest in peace. That is what Progi Uganda is tweeting about. The Maasai again says, may he rest in peace. Professor William Ucheng said, Professor Ali Mazrui was a great man, and I loved the life that he lived. Rest in peace again, quite a number of those messages. Gitobu Imanyara, Professor Ali Mazrui, one of Africa's most eminent scholars, has died in Binghamton, New York, US. Rest in peace, my friend. Linus Kaikai as well. Again, just talking of that death. Family says he was unwell for a couple of months.
Absolutely. Also on life support at some point.
He was on life support
at some point, yeah.
Okay. Dennis Itumbi, sad news, courtesy of course, best journalist, that one of Kenya's scholars, Professor Mazrui, has died. Body will be flown to Mombasa. Is what some are also saying. So a number of people just getting the news now, tweeting about it. And you can send your tribute, whatever it is, towards the end of the show. Look at some of them at Sophia Wanuna. You can tweet me. May he rest in peace, and definitely comfort. We pray for his family and friends, but leaves, as you said, a great legacy. And I like what you said, that at the beginning, in terms of catching on to education, he wasn't into it, and then caught on, and look at what he became. It's amazing.
It's his late father. He even says it in his own bio, that it's his late father, Sheikh Alamin Mazrui, who was one of the greatest scholars of our region, who actually prevailed upon him. And he was lucky to have this citadel of privilege, because you see, at that time, if your father was a priest or a sheikh, those were the things that, if you look at the history of many of our people who met to greatness at that point in time, you'll find that their fathers were either clergy or somewhere in the public administration, and therefore he was able to get this opportunity towards education. Okay. And I think yes, and as I said, he always makes that very clear, that he had a very humble beginning in terms of, even, he did not do very well after in his secondary school, but still soldiered on to become one of Africa's most celebrated scholars.
All right, keep your messages coming, your condolences, send them through at Sophia Nuna. You can post them on our Facebook page, KTN Morning Express. Gentlemen, yes.
I think as tributes come in, every question every Kenyan should be asking himself or herself is that the day you are called to go, what will others be saying about you? Will there be something nice to remember you for? Something you have left for the next generation, or it will just be concrete buildings and stolen property?
Correct.
Let us look at his life and say thanks and make a vow that even us, when you go, there will be something you have left
behind. That there will be an interruption in a program to discuss that legacy.
Yes. Not to thank the Lord that the gap has been sealed. It is good you have gone. You should have gone earlier. It should be that we will miss you, but you will be with us throughout. You will be with us. You made a contribution. They used to have very, very nice, interesting debates between Professor Chieng, you have seen his and it was a pleasure. I had the privilege of shaking his hand, the privilege of shaking Chinua Achebe's hand, and it was a mark. You tell people this hand has shaken the hands of Professor Achebe. But there were other professors who chose the path of mediocrity, and they are gone. And we have forgotten that.
Forgotten.
But then one thing, Sophia, that's also interesting to note, and this I talk about achievement generally. We can all be Professor Mazruis in our own little ways.
True.
So you do not have to be the president of Kenya for you to be remembered for a legacy. You could have done your little presidency back at home and changed the lives and impacted on the lives of so many. Impacted on academia. People who never sought elected positions, like Mother Teresa. She never did it. She never started building wells and was assisting the destitute because she wanted to ask the Indians for their votes. She did it. People have made great contributions in the field of technology. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and our own local people here, Mikatalili, Wamenza. You can be celebrated in your own little unique way. I've seen some of your media stations honoring some of the what you call the unsung heroes, people who have done little contributions, but the impact even to the next person and the next person and the next person. So it's not only about being celebrated at the local and international level. So it's do your little thing.
It's also a challenge to everybody.
Do your little thing. If you're a journalist, you don't have to be the anchor like Sophia Winuna, who's having the ratings of Morning Express going up. Yes, that you can. It will be plausible. But if you're a journalist in your little private way, you can have such an impact in society. And I think, therefore, yes. So let's those we celebrate, we celebrate. Those we will not be able to celebrate, I think the destiny and eternity will celebrate you.
Well said, gentlemen. Indeed, and you'll get the details if you're just joining us. They're scrolling on your screen. The death of Professor Mazrui early this morning, 3:45 a.m. we understand in New York, United States of America. Let's wrap up our discussion on the way it is. So Senator thinks we should not even be talking about whether it was by coincidence that the three chord principals were not in the country, but the leader of majority in the National Assembly says it is not coincidence. He says it was by design, that, and he relates that to what happened when they were being sworn in last year. What do you think? Because they're also out of the country at the same time.
I seriously do not think that the leaders may have planned. I think the invitations that Mheshimiwa Raila received, I don't think they were calculated. The talks were calculated that we know President Uhuru will be leaving the country on this day, so we are giving you. Sometimes people like Adwale also, they don't talk like leaders. They talk like they're playing basic football in Northeastern.
Yeah.
Welcoming back the president in the manner it did was very good and very encouraging. But there was one fundamental mistake that we did as a country.
I saw it in your social media.
I better repeat it.
I saw it on
you
Facebook.
Cannot put the president and the deputy president in one limousine, in an open car, in a jam for 4 hours. Just imagine a situation where some renegade terrorist just throws a hand grenade.
That's it.
Look at it where the country would have been. That is why the president is separate, the deputy is separate, just in case, and that's why there are two. That was a mistake. Some people told me, Weda, that one, you. I believe security is in the hands of God. But God has given us the brain to take certain precautions. That we could not. And remember, they were all coming out, running through Jogo Road, through whatever.
Yeah, that was a huge security net.
If it was not for God, anybody can pick them. The two of them. And there wasn't even a guard to take. That was a mistake. And I say, Your Excellency, and Your Excellency, the Deputy President, that should be taken note. Even if there's another Hague, even if there's another thing, you should never repeat that. We have enemies, we have at war in Somaliland. And whereas we give it to God, we can't turn to God also.
Yeah. I'll come to you because of your party leader involvement, perhaps just to link to that question, that since his involvement or appointment as Cyprus's honorary consul, he's been rather busy and has taken a back seat, even in as far as politics, and more so the Okoa Kenya push. He's globe-trotting.
I think his family in Okoa Kenya, I speak to him regularly. In fact,
but is he too busy to be engaged?
Yeah, the one or two coincidences have happened where we've had major activities when he's out of the country. And if I go by his itinerary, sometimes the ones that are bulleted, you do see that it is. I remember like Mombasa, he said either we move it here, then or I will not be able to come, the Mombasa rally, for instance. And then the problem is the following week was going to be Ramadan, so we could not have a rally at all. So these are scheduled. Like I knew I remember when we were in Boston with His Excellency, the Prime Minister. I do recall he says he'll be coming back to Yale in October. So these are pure coincidences. But for me, I must say this thing. I had Wamatangi, my dear brother and senator for Kiambu, saying that governors should be appointed. I think that's the wrong strategy. The minute we appoint governors, the whole element of devolution.
What informed that comment?
I have no idea. I think what we need to do is to sober up, because these are some of the comments that no matter whatever personal issues we have with our governors, in personal forms or in a collective form, devolution is a political reality of governance that is here to stay. If to appoint a governor like a PC or any other person is to totally defeat devolution. And I think it is that thorax about having an elected representative rather than a DC or county commissioner to be able to articulate bravely and candidly the desires of the county. But secondly, if my senator colleagues are dispassionate about the fact that it's about them being senators, I went to the Bundesrat. In fact, the only reason I went to the Bundesrat is because a very good friend of mine here told me, if you go to the Bundesrat, you will be persuaded that that's probably the structure of an upper house or a senate that you need to have. I went there, and senators, it's called the Federal Council, the Bundesrat. The members of the Bundesrat are actually the counties or the federal governments. So, and they're weighted in terms of their population. So when you get elected back at home as the governor, you sit in the Bundesrat as a representative council of the federal states, together with members that you appoint, you will designate as members to the Bundesrat. Yeah, so they call them the minister general, the president minister, who is the prime minister of that area, then designates from every 16 federal states how many people are to sit in the Bundesrat. The Bundesrat meets about 11 to 12 times a year, but it has programs that are running through committees, that they come to validate in a very short session of 3 to 4 hours every month. And in addition to that, they have veto over all matters county or all matters federal. So they are those laws that are made by the Bundestag, which is the National Assembly format, which then they can register what is called an objection. Okay. But they have whatever matter federal, they can give a consent. So that in a way means that we might need to restructure the Senate more than restructuring the counties. If we are really sincere about devolution, it's not about hanging on to our positions, but doing what works best for Kenya. And I don't think appointing governors is the way to go. Let's
talk about the mega land scandal that's developing. Karen land said to be worth 8 billion shillings. Yes. And members of parliament accused to be at the heart of that. What are your thoughts?
I think...
because more worrying is that there's been a lot of activity over the weekend, subdividing of the land and all, yet there is a court order which I think expires today that nothing should happen to that until the court then gives direction, the High Court.
What I can tell Kenyans is that even if the land was subdivided and people took their titles, since we passed the Constitution 2010, that kind of wanton thievery has been shielded out. And you can steal the land today. Kenya has changed. Those who do not want to learn that this country has changed. Although it is slow, but that kind of theft, the madness about land, it is wrong. So those, especially if we hear the MPs, and I'm sure my learned brother would not do that because he will run for president very soon. And those issues will come. We'll be bringing you the current land and say, Your Excellency, current land. I think that is wrong. Okay. And I have said in this show that what will bring down this country is either negative electricity or land. We are just mad when it comes to land. We just get mad.
Yeah.
So let them stop.
Okay, you might see that I might disagree with opinions of my senior, so to speak.
He wishes you very well.
Yeah. I know, but I also want to have to say one thing. Yes. One thing I like about him is about his honesty on matters government, and I hope the time when we elevate to that position also, you will be able to maintain your church values. Yeah. One of the people I shudder most are those who believe in nothing You know, I shudder those type of people. They have no reference point to any belief system, particularly God. But that said and done, I do recall, and that's the much I can say, that I was called once, and I was told a certain CS was meeting members of the coast region. And I said I was not in a position to come, but I will want to know the outcome of the meeting. So after the meeting, one of my colleagues from Parliament, Parliament is both houses, but so he was from the National Assembly, he called me up and said, can you pass your details, address and full name, Karen. I said, for what? And I told them, guys, don't get into that mix-up. I recall like it was yesterday. I told them, don't get into that mix-up. Mungu akitujalia, we will own this land. You know, some of us come from such humble, poor backgrounds. What we have today, you cannot explain it. You just thank God that you are this country.
So there is truth in that members of parliament.
Loads of truth. In fact, I can tell you the majority of the beneficiaries are members of parliament, and at the risk of having a backlash from them.
Not because beneficiaries, victims, because that is a risk.
Yeah, so they are both beneficiaries / victims. Yeah. So
yes,
I hope my brother Muhammad Sazuri is watching this program. Yes. It was not to do with him. Reverse those allotments. There are more.
But even he says Kenyans. He's not aware of the division of the land. He knows the Dagama to be the one who's, you know, according to their documents, who owns that land.
That's the part of the rivalry that characterizes the CS and the National Land Commission. I'm sure that they are fairly familiar with some of the facts. It's a good. You see, when you ask me as a journalist some things that I want to evade, there are ways I will answer them. It's part of the communication skills you have to develop when dealing with adversity. Okay. But I can tell you for a fact, that land is so true. I think it is just immoral for the 40 or so members to allocate themselves that land. And I think the people who lift the lead, the people in the media, publish the names. I think that would then you have told us to go a step forward further.
Okay. Yeah, we'll continue to see what happened to that story. But finally, Bishop Margaret Wanjiru graduated with a degree in leadership, and after her graduation, she came out to say, I left ODM a long time ago. Those people did me wrong. What do you think about what she had to say, the harsh indictment on ODM and their treatment of her?
I think she's entitled to make an opinion. I also left ODM because everybody knows that unless ODM gets its act right, I support it as part of our coalition partners. I have a soft spot and a liking for the party leader of ODM, party leader of our party, all the three principals. I associate with them very closely. In fact, I'm supposed to be traveling to Mwanza right now for the burial of the president of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, who's Tanzanian. But they need to get right their fiasco in terms of nominations. But I think, in my view, Kidero appears to have been the dominant candidate at that time within the ODM party. You see, one thing that then we cannot do, because we always come with these arguments, gender, mimi natoka kabila hii, so you give me first, and then throw away totally issues of political competition. I see this also playing out since I became a politician. I'm asking, why did you give it to that person? Oh, jua kuna mambo ya gender, sijui kuna mambo ya jua kabila hii, sijui kabila ile. I think it's just morally wrong. Personally, I think she needed to stay on because to keep the faith. I think she finally ended up running for the position of Senator of Nairobi. So it was almost a similar constituency of voters. So if she could have won the governorship, then she probably could have won senatorship. So it's an equal. But I wish her well. It's a right of democratic association. I know she might be reorganizing herself, re-engineering her position so that she can run in a different way. She probably realizes that there may be no vacancy as ODM candidate for Nairobi, and therefore you need to make these political arrangements far in advance. Okay. Yeah, I've seen also some of our colleagues repositioning in Mombasa. Some of our adversaries realized there will be no vacancy.
Some of them went to.
Now, I would like to. I don't want to comment about her leaving ODM, but I would like to congratulate her on her achievement of getting a degree, and also. caution her. One, this is a lady who came from rags to riches. And the arrogance got into her head. You know, when you make it, arrogance went into her head. She forgot about God. I think she must have reached a level where
she's still preaching. She still does.
Just listen.
Okay.
She branded herself Dr. So-and-so. She even said she had the degrees, and she even called somebody a man of Jegas. I looked at her and I said, this one has forgotten the grace of God. The election fiasco in ODM, I think, must have humbled her up, must have taken her to where, to the basics. I don't think even if we celebrate that she has left ODM, but she was not allowed to be governor candidate because she didn't have a degree, and the law required a degree. But that time she was saying, I'm doctor. She was cheating, lying. I'm not a lady of God. Now that she has reached there, we wish her all the best. And to serve this country with integrity and honesty and humility, so that she doesn't call people of Jegas or what, or the way he called another man. And I think ODM has done very well for her. The other day they nominated Hassan. Hassan is a member of parliament. They campaigned for her. But sometimes they always say that for who the gods wants to destroy, they elevate you, they open your mouth, they give you madness, and then you come down. I'm praying for her that God may hold her and uplift her again.
Wakili, that's very harsh.
That is indeed quite some harsh words that harsh. You have chosen to use.
I think when you started by congratulating her for achievements, I thought you were going to leave it at that.
I know, I thought it was going to be better, but hey,
we hope to have her. I'm looking at you like I'm about to tell you, please stop.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll end it there for today. Thank you so much. We hope to have her and she can talk to us more about what exactly.
Just allow me to congratulate, to wish the Form 4 candidates success, and especially McQueenie Boys High School, where my son is. I'm waiting for success, and may God give you strength to not fear.
And your son will make it, and we also wish all the Form 4s out there well. I know there will be some prayers at Mombasa, in other places, and we ask for God's intervention. And we ask them, those youngsters there, don't cheat. Don't cheat. If you start to cheat now, you will always cheat in your life. Correct. So I think this is the right, even parents should be party to that, and their teachers, to ensure that they just go in there. It's an examination after all.
It's not
they
life
pass,
and
they
death.
lose, they don't pass, it's not the end of life, but we wish them all well.
All the best. Well, thank you both for being with us. This morning on The Way, it is always a pleasure.